Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat sermon by Rabbi Adam Kligfeld.
There's a concept in the halachic literature of a mountain hanging by a thread. And it's a reference to the fact that sometimes there's an enormous amount of legal material that governs how Jews live that's hanging by the thinnest of connections, the actual source of it all, the Torah. Right? The classic mountain hanging by a thread of the laws of Shabbat. I mean, the number of books on my shelf that are just dedicated to the particular halachot, the laws of observing Shabbat, is voluminous. What does the Torah say about Shabbat? Lo teva aroesh b'chol moshvatechem. Don't light a match in all of your dwellings and rest. That's all it says. Right? It's a very thin hair, and there is the entire Rockies are hanging from it. So when it comes to the development of Jewish law, the rabbis were rather expansive, and sometimes more interestingly expansive on the smallest of sources. I also find that some of the most interesting midrashim that don't lead to Jewish law but lead to our understanding of the tradition are also focused on the smallest of words. Rick Muller, who often sits right there, I think he's downstairs today, in my Rashi class on Wednesdays, he's often talking about how much happens on the word zeh. What does zeh mean? Zeh means this. But he kind of follows the pattern of the different trope, the different musical accompaniments of the word zeh, and he has this theory that the word zeh means something much bigger than just this. Something similar happens when it comes to the verse from which we get the laws of lulav and etrog, which we don't wave today, so I thought I would focus on it in the drash because we don't have an opportunity to actually ritualize it today. And that is the word lachem. The verse from Vayikra Leviticus says, Ulakachtem lachem. You shall take lachem, to yourself, for yourself, on behalf of yourself, all these four species. There are very few words in the Torah on which a greater number of commentators have offered a commentary. When you open up Safaria on this verse, right, you usually click on a verse, and sometimes in any given verse there might be 15 comments, or 20 comments, or 30 comments, and not every commentator throughout the ages comments on every word. On the word lachem, there are no fewer than 146 comments on what the word lachem, to you, for you, means. Right? And that's not even comprehensive. That's just the ones that happen to be uploaded onto the Safaria website. It reminds me of the many, many commentators on the word lech lecha, which we're going to hear in a few weeks, when God says to Avram, lech lecha, not just go, but go to yourself, go for yourself. What does the second half of the phrase mean? So what does it mean that when God commanded us to take the four species that we're not taking today, God didn't just say take, but take lachem, for you? I want to offer three paradigms amongst the hundreds. One of them is purely halachic, Jewish legal, and I actually mentioned it on the first day of Sukkot. One of the midrashim that says the meaning of ulakachtem lachem, you have to take hold of a set of four species that you own, belonging to you. Ulakachtem lachem. Take for yourselves the ones that actually are connected to you. It reminds me of the law that happens at every Jewish wedding, whether or not you're aware of it, you ought to be, and that is that the ring that the groom puts on the bride's finger, in the moment that he puts it on his finger, he has to own it. He's giving him something that he owns, a ring, because she's giving something that she owns, fidelity, trust, her commitment, and vice versa. So I tell every bride and groom, no matter what your individual financial arrangements are, when you are giving the ring to your bride under the chuppah, you have to own it on some meaningful legal level. Same thing with a lulav and etrog. You have to own the set that you are saying the blessings with, which means you have this moment in shul, which we had the last 2 days and we'll have tomorrow. Not everyone who comes to shul has bought a set. That's fine. You're not allowed to lend your lulav and etrog to someone because then it wouldn't be lachem. It wouldn't be fulfilling lachem. You have to go to someone who doesn't have it and say, here, I give you my lulav and etrog as a gift. As a gift. If the person finishes benching lulav and etrog and wants to give it back to you, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to, according to Jewish law, because they had to own it the moment that they were waving it. Why is it so significant to own the lulav and etrog when you wave it? According to Rabbi J. Kelman, who's currently a rabbi in Toronto, The primary purpose of the lulav is to express our thanks for the harvest, for the fact that we had food to eat. It's a tangible way to express hakarat hatov, thanksgiving for our many blessings. And the giving of thanks must be done personally, in this case with our own lulav and etrog. You can't give thanks with something that doesn't belong to you. You have to give thanks from something that is yours. That's paradigm one. Paradigm two, not legal, but what I would say extra legal. There are many phrases in Jewish practice that refer to things that are beyond what you minimally must do, but what you're encouraged to do. We have the notion of lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the letter of the law. When you are obligated to something financially or conceptually, Jewish culture praises if you go beyond the minimum that you required. There's also a concept of hidur mitzvah, which is understood to be the beautification of a mitzvah. Not just doing it on the lowest level, but doing it on the highest level. Do you have to set your Shabbat table pleasantly with flowers? No. You fulfill the laws of Shabbat just simply by saying the brachot. But to walk into a Shabbat dining room that looks beautiful, that is hidur mitzvah. Some of you may have grown up with the stories I did of Yosef Mokir Shabbos. It's a story from the Talmud that was expanded into a grander story about the guy who had nothing, but no matter what he did, he sold everything he had to make sure that he had a beautiful fish to put on his table on Shabbat evening, because that was hidur mitzvah. In other words, ulakachtem lachem. You should be taking a lulav and an etrog that you're going to like, that's going to be aesthetically pleasing to you, that you're going to enjoy, because it's hidur mitzvah. You fulfill the mitzvah by waving it. It's hidur mitzvah if you're enjoying it while you're waving it. When I was a kid, we had a shul trip every year, and the years we didn't, I would go with my family to the Lower East Side of Manhattan and walk down the streets and picking out our lulav and etrog. I didn't have a clue about Jewish law when I was 9 years old. I could not have told you what halachic criteria I should be looking for. But I kind of instinctually knew I was picking out an etrog that I was going to like. Why would I like it? Who knows? Right? It's hard to discuss aesthetics, but I knew it was significant that I would see one that spoke to me and I would choose it, and that would be the one that I would wave throughout Sukkot. Our sages, Chazal, tried to legalize, very challengingly, and standardize the notion of beauty in halakha. It's very hard to standardize and legalize halakha, but they tried. They tried to talk about whether or not the one that's most aesthetically pleasing has to do with the size, whether it has clear skin or bumpy skin. They even had a Hebrew word that we define in English as personality. Does it have interesting crevices, your etrog, or is it more flat? The problem is that we have this phrase in almost every culture. In Hebrew, it's betam v'reach ein lehidvakeach. When it comes to taste and smell, you can't argue. If you say something that tastes good, and I say it doesn't taste good, which one of us is right? We can't convince the other. So it's very challenging to legalize and standardize the notion of aesthetic choice for your lulav and etrog. Rabbi Yisachar Katz wrote the following: Hasidim, for the most part, prefer size, bigger ones, and personality, right, how bumpy it is in the crevices, and they care less about cleanliness, whether or not there's any like brown schmutz on your etrog. While for Litvaks, Jews who come from Lithuania and other places nearby, it's the reverse. There's also a political component to the process. Israeli etrogim often tend to be less clean than non-Israeli ones. And does your choice represent something in that situation? So legally, you need to own your lulav and etrog. But hedoristically, you don't only need to own it, you need to like it. Otherwise, the mitzvah will become what's called in Jewish law, ma'us alecha, ugly to you. I have experience with mitzvot that over certain amounts of performances of them became ma'us alai, ugly to me. I'll tell you one. For 9 years, many of you know, I was the rabbi of a small synagogue in upstate New York. And many, many weeks, almost the entirety of the obligation of reading Torah, and we did a full Torah reading, was on me. I had some helpers, and occasionally I only had to read 1 or 2, but sometimes I had to read 5 or 6 or 7. And I have been enjoying the mitzvah of reading Torah since I was 13 years old. I took to it. I'm musical. I like it. There were Friday nights in 2001, and 2002, and 2003, and 2004, and 2005, where instead of myself enjoying the rest and the beauty of Shabbat in my house, I was up late when everyone was sleeping with my tikkun, trying to get to the 5th aliyah, and then trying to get to the 6th aliyah, and then trying to memorize the 7th aliyah. And at some point, I felt my body stiffening towards a mitzvah that I was supposed to love. It was becoming ma'usalai. It was just too much. It was too burdensome. I was no longer able to enjoy the aesthetics of reading Torah. It was simply an anvil on my head. It's possible that anything that you're obligated to do, you can stop enjoying if there isn't enough aesthetic pleasure in experiencing it. You're supposed to choose a lulav and etrog that you're going to enjoy. Paradigm 3. The aesthetics of this mitzvah are wonderful, and they're whimsical, and it's a personal part of the holiday, choosing a set that you're going to love. But it could be overdone. It could be overdone to perseverate on micro details of a citron, and it's possible to lose the forest from the trees. My grandfather used to tell this joke. I think it's okay to tell in shul. We'll find out in a second. A woman goes to a butcher, and she wants to buy a chicken. And the butcher hands her over a chicken, and he's about to ring her up. And she goes, wait a second, I want to look at this chicken. And she takes one wing of the chicken, and she lifts it up, and she looks in, and she sniffs. And she takes the other wing of the chicken, she licks it up, she looks around, she sniffs. He's about to ring her up. Wait a second, I'm not done. She does the same thing with the drumstick, another drumstick, and then she looks down in the center where the neck used to be, and she looks in. She's staring and investigating this chicken for about 5 minutes. At some point, the butcher says, hey, lady, could you pass such a test? Can I tell that in shul?
You just did.
I just did. It's possible to hyper-focus on details that you think matter to you and lose the forest for the trees. I'll tell you a little story that reminds you of that. A rabbi was given a beautiful etrog for Sukkot. He didn't like it. B'tam barech ein livakech. It wasn't his style. He sent it back. But he sent it back very close to the holiday. And so there weren't that many left. So he was searching through the leftovers, the ones that were the last ones to be sold, the ones that you could purchase on the cheap, the rejects. And none of the ones that he found had the splendor of the one that he was gifted but sent back. And as he's looking through the lulav and the etrog, there's a look of scorn on his face. A simple man is watching this whole thing, and he notices a look of scorn as this rabbi is picking out an object of mitzvah. And he asked the rabbi, what's going on? The rabbi told him the story. The simple man says, you know what? I never have that problem. I love the one I end up with each year. The rabbi says, how is that possible? The man says, listen, I don't have a lot, but I spend what I can on the etrog, and I never look at it. I just buy it in the box until the first morning of the holiday. I get to shul, carrying my etrog, still concealed in the box. I put it next to me, and all morning I think about the fact that I, even a simple person, will have the zechut. I'm going to have the merit to join in the procession and with everyone else in the room. I think about the generations of Jews that have kept this tradition alive, my parents, my grandparents of blessed memory. I think about the Torah's commandment, ulakachtem lachem, take it for yourself. And I understand it to mean that I am to take it in such a way that it truly feels as if it is a gift for me. For God, yes, but also for me. What a blessing. And every year I'm so overcome with emotion that by the time I open the box and see the etrog for the first time, I'm crying through my tears. And every etrog I have ever chosen looks perfect. Sometimes in the search for the thing that we are sure we want, we might surrender what we most need: equanimity, a sense of wonder at the blessings that we have, however much we have spent on an etrog, whether we're able to buy it with our own funds or arrange for a temporary gifting from someone else, whether the etrog is wonderfully dimpled and fragrant with a proud pitom, or flat and plain and odorless citron with a tilted tip. How wonderful it is that we get to hold it and be alive right now. To be able to perform this ritual in this room, not today, with these people, at this moment in history, in this country, without fear of missiles raining on our head, surrounded by people on the sacred journey with a powerfully shared sense of purpose. In that context, What etrog would not be exquisite? So we don't wave them today, but we have 4 more days to perform Ulakachtem Lachem. So I encourage you, take your 4 species, or find them if you don't own them, and see if you can own them for a minute. And do the ritual. Make sure that you not only own it, but you enjoy it when you're doing it. Find the aesthetic in the ritual. Find the beauty all around you, including in the idea that you are even alive and able to perform the ritual in the first place.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.